how can I create the situation where whatever it is that I sell, if there's somebody out there that's right for them, how can I enable them to have the information that they need? How can I get them to a point where they feel safe to make that decision to spend that money with me on what I'm selling?
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, as we cover a whole host of marketing topics. I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch, we'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn, the link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. What is the difference between a metric and a measurement? So easily interchangeable, aren't they? But they do have subtle differences that we need to discuss. We'll be doing that later, but first, it's time to chat with Jacqui Jagger. Jacqui is a mindset and business coach who helps hardworking, ambitious business owners to stop overthinking and start taking action to grow their business. More importantly for us, from an assignment CIM point of view, Jacqui can help us understand how to stop playing around the edges and start making definite, purposeful progress so that you feel like your studies and writing are always making that progress, which it inevitably is. The best thing is there is no fluff or BS with Jacqui. We train our bodies, we look after our pets, we even buy insurance for our phones, rings, watches and household appliances. But do we pay as much attention to our minds and mindset, which is probably the most important out of everything? There is no insurance claim to be had from a lack of mindset. With this in mind, I wanted to go deep with the opening question. So here goes. Jacqui, marshmallows and spaghetti. Discuss.
So I think where you got this from was a LinkedIn post where I'd been buying marshmallows and spaghetti, and it was for a training exercise. So there's an exercise where we'll give people a packet of spaghetti and a packet of marshmallows, and they have a time limit to be able to build the tallest structure that they can.
That's it.
So it's about looking at how people work together. There's a competitive element of how tall a structure can they build. So it's quite a good one to use if you've got a few groups in the same room.
Yeah.
And then, often what happens is as the time starts to tick down, people get frantic. And these amazing structures that they've created collapse at the last moment. So it's always great for bringing out learning.
Yeah, it helps if you don't eat the marshmallows, though.
People do ask that. And
Yeah.
they want to unpick it and eat the marshmallows after. I'm like, how many people have touched that and what have you done with it?
You've put me right off that. Right. Let's get into this then. What's the story that's brought you to this stage of your career as mindset and business coach at Beyond Boundaries?
So I guess really the idea of coaching for me probably started a number of years ago. So the kind of employed job that I think was closest to my dream job was I spent 5 years in a really fast growing entrepreneurial business. And I just absolutely loved it. So it was very much fly by the seat of your pants. We had to kind of learn and adapt and grow. And that was where I first had coaching. So for me, coaching just felt magical. It was kind of, how can you spend 2 hours with somebody and at the end of it come out and just think so differently about so many different things, kind of come up with so many different ideas, and be able to do things differently. So it's always been a passion of mine, kind of developing and working with other people and seeing them kind of grow and thrive and flourish. So yeah, it took a while for me to get to the stage of being able to well, I thought financially that I was kind of nice and safe and steady in my career, and that was the way to go. And I thought that was holding me back. And actually, what I later realised was that it was more a case of fear of failure. It was the idea of, if I left my career and set up a business and then I failed and other people saw me fail, what would they think? Which really then triggered into, well, actually, what does it matter what other people think? What would I think of me? So yeah, it was really, I guess, over the experience that I've had during my career, loving that kind of development of other people, and then that kind of personal journey of getting to the point really where I was kind of, yeah, it was my passion. It was what I wanted to do, and I was confident to give it a go. So
Excellent.
that was about 3 years ago, and I retrained, and yeah, here I am.
And never look back. So that's brought us nicely to this stage where you're at now. Can you just explain what you do in terms of what an actual mindset coach is?
Yeah, so I really wrangled with whether to call myself a mindset coach when I first set up. So it's quite a new term, and it's not particularly well recognised or understood. And I think there can be a perception that it's a little bit fluffy. If there's one thing I'm not, it's fluffy. I'm very straightforward, very down to earth. So yeah, I don't do kind of woo-woo and spiritual stuff. So mindset really is just a term for the patterns of thoughts and beliefs that we have going on in our brain. So there's quite a lot of neuroscience involved in what I do, of kind of that understanding of how the brain works, why we behave in certain ways. So we tend to behave in line with our underlying beliefs, but it's very easy for beliefs to be formed and patterns to be formed in our brain that we don't consciously recognise. So mindset coaching is about working with somebody. It's kind of like being a personal trainer for the brain. So you're kind of working with somebody who has a goal that they want to achieve. And in my case, that's typically growing their business or growing themselves so that they can grow their business. And it's then helping people to understand and recognise how to use their brain differently so that they then behave differently to get the result that they want.
I love that personal trainer for the brain, because we've just had mental health awareness week or day. I can't remember which one it is now, but massively important. And that's coming to the forefront, and it's never been easier to talk about things like that now. And it's easy to see on the outside when somebody is maybe training at a gym or training for a marathon or whatever it might be, but it's almost impossible to see what's going on inside.
Yeah. and it's still, within coaching, it's still quite common that certainly in the early stages, people don't tell other people that they're getting coaching. Mm-hmm. There's this perception sometimes that if you're good at what you do, you don't need a coach. Yeah. And actually, it's often the case that the reverse is true. Kind of the better place that you are as a start point, similar again to the kind of physical thing. If you're already pretty athletic, then if you work with a personal trainer on something specific, you're probably going to get results quicker. And I think there is that perception sometimes that if people do need to work on kind of what's going on up here, then it's quite difficult for people to talk about that. And like you say, now people are getting more aware of the importance of mental health and well-being. So that kind of longer term strategy, mm-hmm. So not dealing with problems as they occur, but actually that kind of preventative, developmental stage of, kind of stopping issues happening and actually improving well-being on a more general basis.
You mentioned a few things there about woo-woo and fluff and everything, and mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a few cynical people listening thinking, yeah, right, okay, how the hell does this work? That kind of attitude. Just for an example, I don't like selling, never have. I've seen it as an evil, and as I've grown older, I've realised that's completely and utterly the wrong way to look at it. And, I'm developing that, and that's fine. But how do you guide me through like some kind of mind block like that?
So that is one of the favourite ones actually that I
Yeah, I
work
can
with
imagine.
business
Yeah.
owners, because it is such a common one to be a thorny issue. So if somebody has never had to sell before, often the associations that people have are that sales is slimy, it's icky, it's deceitful. The associations that are formed are of, when you buy a mobile phone or a car or what have you, quite kind of high pressure, pushy sales environments. So in your brain, when you're then saying, right, I want to sell, your brain is going to resist it because your brain is kind of like, but no, I'm a nice person. I don't want to be that pushy person. So you kind of get this internal wrangling and conflict going on at a subconscious level because you're asking your brain to do something where the association is that that isn't a nice thing to do. If you flip it and look at the opposite side and look at your experience as a buyer, live in a consumer society. We buy stuff all the time. And the good experiences that we have, the things that we buy that we enjoy, that we appreciate, whether that be, an expensive holiday, whether that be, a pair of shoes, whether that be, the weekly food shop, we buy stuff all the time.
Mm.
And as a buyer, we don't have that emotional attachment to what we're buying. We have that kind of view of does it fit what I want? Is it a price that I'm happy to pay? We kind of generally, as a buyer, have a lot of logic in the way that we rationalize our buying decisions. So often when I work with people around sales, it's helping them to flip and think from a buyer perspective. How can I create the situation where whatever it is that I sell, if there's somebody out there that's right for them, how can I enable them to have the information that they need? How can I get them to a point where they feel safe to make that decision to spend that money with me on what I'm selling? So it stops being about you and trying to push something and trying to sell and becomes about those potential customers that are out there and how you can best create a process that will work for them. And that often is quite a light bulb moment for people.
That's that.
Very different way of thinking.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. The one thing that I'm a big believer on routines and things like that. And I suppose you have good routines and bad routines. So how important setting goals, having those routines, and picking up the good habits that you need?
So it's a really interesting question because our lives are ruled by habit. So
Mm-hmm.
whether you put your left shoe on first or your right, whichever your route is to work, we have all these habits that we're not consciously aware of. They've just become routine patterns of behaviour. So if those habits are serving you well and they're getting you the results that you want, then that's great. And the frustration often comes when we have habits that are not getting us. So whether that's kind of health and well-being, whether that's work, whether that's study, if we haven't got those routines in place, then it can be frustrating. So when it comes to goal setting, there's a whole heap around setting SMART goals. And for me, often that comes in too early. So people try to set their SMART goals and think about what's realistic, how they're going to measure things, how specific it is. But the stage before that, for me, is really getting clear on why something matters. Because if you haven't got a strong enough reason to do something, to make a change to the behaviour that isn't working, then it's going to be really difficult to sustain the effort that you need to make that change in habit. So a lot of the work that I do around goal setting is not about getting really specific and detailing the objectives. It's about getting really clear on what will it look and feel like when I've got to that place. How can I keep that vision alive of having achieved the thing that I want to achieve? How do I keep that to sustain me to drive the behaviour that I want to drive day to day? And then when it comes to habits, there's kind of a few areas that you can kind of think of if you want to make changes. So change one thing at once. A lot of people will typically try and change a number of habits. and that's a lot of effort for the brain, and therefore is quite difficult. So work on one thing at once. And another tip that I would say is to find a trigger that will create a habit for you. So a really simple example, if I want to drink more water, I make sure that I always have a glass of water on my desk, because rather than trying to focus on how much water I want to drink and measure it, if all I have to do is commit to I've always got a glass of water on my desk, the behaviour follows naturally. It's there, I just end up drinking more water. So it's making it as easy as possible for the environment to naturally generate the behaviour that you want, rather than worrying about all of the detail that sometimes makes life easier.
That's really interesting. I was listening to another podcast, and I'm sure it was about habits. It was a long time ago, and what they were saying was that absolutely bang on what you're saying, like the water, but that they gave flossing and using dental floss as an analogy. So it's like you need to floss. Yeah, it's okay. I'll just put it on the side, or I'll put it in the cupboard. Well, that's not going to change your habit. So what they said is wrap it around your toothbrush. You've got no excuse then. So as soon as you wake up, you got to pick your toothbrush up. You've got to hold that in your hand, and that will just change your habit. So great tip there. And it's so interesting that you mentioned SMART goals and not starting with the SMART goals, because that's exactly what we say in marketing and in our teachings, in that you never start with the SMART goals. You always look at the situation analysis and what you need to change. And it's just, there's so much synergy there. It's unreal.
And I think it's a message that gets missed often if people don't. So, when you're studying and you kind of get those overall principles, you can apply them in whatever way you need to. And I think so much of the information that is out there for people is focused on that further down the line. And I think that can become really confusing, because people will try and use that information. And it does get confusing, because it's frustrating as to kind of why I'm trying to apply this, why is it not working? And actually, if you take that step back and start with the bigger picture, then it becomes clear why it's not working.
Yeah, I've just got one quick story to tell you, and it's about my dad. He'll probably kill me for saying this, but so
love those kind of stories.
when my dad used to work, he was the one that collected all the money to do the lottery every week. Yes. For people that are listening, people used to collect money and actually pay for things with money. Nowadays, it wasn't done online. And he in the winter, he used to wear this coat. So in his top pocket, he used to put the money. Job done, dead easy. Get into work, money in the pocket, off you go. And he'd never change his coat until April, until Easter. Okay. And we had one year when March was red hot. So he was driving to work in this jacket because he kept the money in the top pocket. And he said he was sweating. And it's like, why didn't you just change the coat? No, I'm not changing my coat until no, never do it until Easter. And it's like, I don't even know if that's a good habit or a bad habit, but there you go.
But it's that thing, I guess, of people not questioning the reason why they're doing something.
Yeah.
And it is so common that people just repeat stuff and don't even realise whether it's helping or hindering. They're just doing it because it's a routine. But yeah, love that. I've got visions of him now, like you say, driving.
Yeah, the worst thing. The worst thing was, shouldn't be telling you this. The worst thing was, when he was in his car, he noticed this button that said AC, and he didn't know what that did. So he never pressed it. So he asked somebody, and they said, well, it's your air conditioning. It cools the car down. He went, I thought it was something to do with electricity. So he's been driving around sweating, looking at this AC button. It's
just there. Touch of a button, but no.
Yeah, touch of a button and it's away. But I suppose some of your teachings are just that other corner. You know, those little tweaks, like you say, just that one change, and you can start to change your mindset.
Yeah.
But here's a classic for you then. There's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
How do you get clients to allow themselves the time to get the stuff done that they actually need to, and Doctor Who isn't the answer here, I'm afraid. So you can't go down
No,
that
no,
route.
no TARDIS allowed. No, it is a really, really common one. And again, often it comes back to the thought processes. So we have all of these pressures that we put on ourselves of all of the things that we think we should do. And we have all of these habits of things that we're already doing. And what we tend to do is try and pile more in on top. So if I'm going to study, I'm adding that in on top. And whatever you say yes to has a consequence in that it means that there's something to say no to. And I think that's the question that people don't always ask themselves. So priority, the word priority, comes from the Latin root prior, meaning first or before. And I think that for me is a really key part of this, where people have a finite amount of time and energy. A clear priority, a clear understanding of what has to come first is crucial. And it's often a step in the planning that gets missed. So if you have 58 things that you're trying to get done, you will not have the time and energy to do them all well. And I think it's that question of, okay, if I'm going to do this, what am I not going to do to create that opportunity to do the thing that really matters? Mm-hmm. And the kind of advice on prioritizing and kind of important and urgent, I think, again, is kind of soundbited down so much that what it misses is important and urgent relative to what? Because it's relative to the goal that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
It's relative to what matters. And actually, you can often end up with a quadrant with 58 things in different boxes, and you still don't have time to do even all the things that are important and urgent. Mm-hmm. But if everything that's on there has to relate to what matters most, then you end up with a smaller list, and that's when you can really start to see the progress.
I think you just summarised my life at the moment in time, but I'm fine because I know Doctor Who, so it's all good. Don't have to worry about that.
So it's all right when you've got a Time Lord on your side.
Exactly, I'm golden, really. Actually, I know how this all ends, by the way. So, and we've got some great questions coming up, and it's hilarious. So, there
excellent.
You go. I read something you posted on LinkedIn a while ago. Mm-hmm. Okay, if everything is important, then nothing is, and I really like that. But can you just explain it a little further?
Yeah, and I guess that really follows on from what we've just been saying. So if you end up with so many things that you think are important, then actually none of them can really have the focus or attention that they deserve. And it's something that was first said to me probably 10, 12 years ago. It was when I was at the entrepreneurial business that I used to work at. And it was that case of really helping to keep us kind of on track and narrowed in from, because there were so many things we could do. It was about what should we actually do? Mm-hmm. What do we need to do? So yeah, it's as simple as that, really.
Just want to focus in on assignments and exams, because mm-hmm. people that are listening to this should be studying and not listening to this, really. So counterintuitive, to be honest. If you were to coach somebody through a qualification, mm-hmm. what would you be advising them?
So again, it really comes back to starting off by understanding and getting real focus on why that matters to them, getting that awareness of what will be different, why they care, how it will help. So that might be about their career. It might be about, if they're a business owner, how that qualification's going to make a difference to their business. But getting really clear on that first off. And then it's about starting to consider, okay, if I'm here now and that's what I need to be doing, what does that look like? What does that process look like that's going to enable me to make the most progress in the easiest way? So it's thinking about, what environment are you at your best in when it comes to study? Is it better to stay in the office for an hour and do some work there? Is it better to do it at home? Is it better to go to a cafe? And that will be very individual for different people. So it's creating the plan that works for them, about the process that will enable it to be as easy and straightforward as possible. And again, on the habits front, it's about how they can then create those habits around study. Do they enjoy interacting with other people? Do they want to create a study group where they can have conversations to embed learning? Do they want to, handwrite notes, because using coloured pens visually, really helps things stick in their brain? So there will be, with those questions, there's often things that people already know about themselves, but they probably just haven't thought to ask themselves those questions.
Yeah.
And it can help to really make quite a difference quite quickly, because it is all about kind of making it as easy as possible for someone to get the result that they want.
And that goes back to another thought that we've spoken about, and that's I haven't got much time, and it's where do you fit the studying in when they're really busy, etc., etc. And one of the questions on a superficial level that I always say to them is, okay, I understand you're really busy, you haven't got time. Just tell me what happened in EastEnders last night. Oh yeah, I can tell you that. There's your half an hour then, and then that's on four times a week. I think there's 2 hours a week that I've just given you for free. And that
again is the what you say yes to and what you say no to, and it's about consciously being aware of what you're going to say no to in order to create the time and space to do your best work.
So speaking of conscious awareness, are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Oh, go on.
Yes.
Edge of my seat.
I think everybody is at this point. Well, I know they are because I've been with Doctor Who and seen them.
Exactly.
Name one must-read business book.
So I would say The Chimp Paradox, which is all about kind of mindset and approach and that kind of whole goal-setting process and how to get better results.
What was the last thing you Googled?
It was the times for the Six Nations rugby fixtures. What time am I going to the pub?
Excellent. That is something you should be Googling. What is your most used app at the moment?
LinkedIn by a country mile. I'm a LinkedIn geek. I love it. And I just have met the most amazing people on there, including you. Just love the conversations that happen on there. So I'm on there all the time.
Yeah, same here. Massive advocate for it. It's brilliant. It doesn't give it's not given the recognition it deserves in my opinion, and it's getting better all the time. Although bizarrely, this morning I woke up to about 40 notifications, and they were all from about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, same here.
Bit weird.
Random.
Again, well, I'm telling you, it's Doctor Who, and I know that for a fact. What is your favourite theory, concept, or methodology?
I would say probably growth mindset. So this is based on the work of Carol Dweck, and it's really looking at how innate talent is overrated and given kind of too much, kind of brought to the forefront too much, and that actually if we change the way that we think and change the way that we apply effort, then we can improve. It's as it's been publicised more widely. Again, I think it's been dumbed down a little bit, but her book is brilliant. It's really accessible and really thought-provoking.
Very cool. Check that out. Finally, what would be your one tip for people that are studying at the moment?
I think to be really clear on why it matters to them. To keep that at the forefront of their minds on, what difference this is going to make, because that's what they'll need to kind of sustain them when they desperately want to watch EastEnders and they've got to get the books open.
And I can tell you now, it's all miserable anyway, so you might as well open the books and just dive right in, because that's far more exciting.
Definitely.
Final question, Jacqui. If people want to get in touch with you, where should they go?
LinkedIn, because as I've said, I'm on there all the time. So yeah, I'm Jacqui, Jacqui. So the slightly bizarre spelling of it. And I'm also online at beyondboundariescoaching.co.uk.
Jacqui, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. I've really enjoyed this. So fascinating. It's great.
I've loved it. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's been brilliant.
Thanks once again, Jacqui. Really intriguing and interesting, all this mindset business. I find it amazing the synergy between marketing planning and the way we tackle our own mindset. Jacqui pointed out that you shouldn't start with your goals and objectives, but with the why. Why are you doing what you are doing or want to do? And this is the same as reviewing your situation analysis within a marketing strategy before you set your actual objectives. You don't know where you want to go if you don't know where you are to begin with. Why do you not have the time to do everything you want to? Jacqui says the problem with this is that we fill our time with the should-dos, the habits we currently have, and then we add the other things on top of this that come up. So stop right now. Get clear, get focused on what is important, create a plan that works for you and use it. And finally, find that trigger. Find the trigger that will break the habit or create a new one. For example, want to go to the gym more? Put your gym stuff out ready. Or even tie your running shoes to the front door. That way, it's in front of you and in front of your mind. Don't put it to the side, hidden away. It's easy to be missed and stay in your old habits. But make sure you're only changing one thing at once. Don't be fooled into thinking that you can change everything at the same time overnight. This will only lead to overwhelm and falling back into the same old habits. Speaking of the same old habits, now is the time to stop using metrics and measurements as the same interchangeable word. Now, mastering metrics can be difficult, especially in an assignment scenario. Mastering metrics is actually one of the CIM modules at level 6, so this is massively important. But what are the differences between the two? Hopefully, in explaining these, your assignment and the wording behind it will become much, much clearer. First of all, what is a metric? In marketing terms, a metric is something that can be based on a standardized procedure, calculation method, or system for generating a number that's compared to others, as opposed to a measurement, which is slightly different. This is the number that is generated by taking a measurement that doesn't necessarily have to be taken in the same way every time, as it's not compared to others. It's its own single entity. So if you're still confused, let's take an example and make it perfectly clear what the heck we mean. Say you're asked to measure the size of a room. This would be your measurement, the calculation that you get from this measurement. Then you're asked to provide the average size of all the rooms in a house. The outcome would be the metric of all the measurements. Got it? So if you're asked for measurement techniques, think of things that do the measuring. For metrics, think of the things that are looked at in comparison to each other. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.